Should we TARP the TARP or what? Let's have a little discussion, a debate. CNBC contributor Keith Boylin on the one side, Art Laffer on the other side. Art, the co-author of The End of Prosperity. Hello, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Hello,
good evening.
All right. Keith Boylin, I say TARP the TARP. I don't understand why we need $350 billion. The public is against that, and so am I. Why is your man Obama going down this road?
We do need the money. Obviously, there's an urgent need. We have a crisis in our country. 2.5 million jobs were lost last year. That's the worst since actually 1945, the end of World War II. I think we need the TARP, but we need accountability. We need transparency. We need homeowner protections. We need some sort of executive compensation limitations. We need corporate restrictions. We need to have some sort of assurance that the money is going to be used wisely, which we didn't have under Hank Paulson.
Well, Art Laffer, there are a lot of restrictions. I'll agree with Keith on that point. There are so many restrictions, the stock market, private investors, and private capital hate it. And I want to ask you, with credit markets loosening up, there seems to be a thaw, Art. Do we really need son of TARP? Do we really need to keep throwing money at this problem?
I think TARP and the other stimulus packages, Larry, are the reason why we have this really bad economy. I think if we spend more on TARP and if we spend more on these stimulus packages, the economy will fall faster. Every time they announce a new program, today isn't any different, but every time they announce it, the market goes down a little bit further. The markets are forecasting a disastrous economy as much because of these stimulus packages. You can't bail someone out of trouble, Larry, without putting someone else into trouble. The government doesn't have a tooth fairy, and the less the government increases the national debt, the better off we'll be. And they're just going hog wild on it.
Well, with all due respect to Mr. Laffer, I have to disagree with what you said. The TARP isn't responsible for the economic crisis. The TARP was approved in October. The recession started in December of 2007. So long before anybody needed the TARP, we were already in severe economic consequences. And besides that,
why do we need it? I mean, you're right, factually. So what you're saying is TARP was extraneous.
No, TARP was a result of the failed economic policies of the Bush administration that squandered the Clinton surpluses, doubled the national debt, and put a blind eye to corporate greed. Keith, that's what happened.
All right.
Keith, I will concede that you won the election, and let's not. It's not a political thing anymore. This has to do with our country. There's no election coming down the road anytime soon. If you take the money and give it to one group of people, you've got to take it from taxpayers. And you are giving it to losers and to people who don't have to work to get the money.
Oh, my God.
And it comes from people who do. Well, the auto companies, look at the auto companies.
That's an offensive statement. That's an offensive statement, Art.
The auto companies are losers.
The idea that some people
are losers.
One at a time. On this issue of losers. Okay, now hang on.
Yeah,
they are losers. All right. They're the losers in the economic sense is what you're saying.
Yes, that's what I mean, of course.
Well, what you're saying is Citigroup is a loser, too.
Yes, Citigroup is a loser, and I don't want to defend them, and I don't want to bail them out. In other words, why are we rewarding losers but not helping the winners or the potential winners, Keith? I think, Art, that's what you're getting at.
That's exactly what I meant. That's exactly it.
And, Keith, just on this point, stay with me for a minute. It seems to me a lot of this TARP money is going to wind up going not to banks, not to prevent so-called systemic risk, a problem I think that has basically gone away. It's going to go to home mortgage foreclosures and other housing issues. It's going to go to Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors. It's going to go to retailers. It's going to go to small businesses. Every candy store in America is going to come with their hands open for TARP, Keith. Doesn't that trouble you?
Well, it troubles me. It troubles me that some of the people, and I'm not mentioning you specifically, Larry, but some of the people who were complaining now about spending this money were not complaining as loudly about bailing out Wall Street.
I did.
Again, I'm not mentioning you, Art, or Larry.
No, I was against it.
But I do think there's a double standard here. We were told, led to believe in September and October there was an urgent crisis. We needed to spend $700 billion immediately. We gave the money. Congress approved the money. Now there's a second half that needs to be approved. And now that we have a Democrat coming into the White House, everybody wants to be everybody wants to play fiscal disciplinarian. That seems a little inconsistent. There wasn't the same sort of fiscal discipline in the previous administration.
You probably disagree with this part. I felt the original TARP plan to buy toxic assets and resell them was a good idea.
I did not.
All right, I understand that. But after that, all this takeover of the banks, I don't like it. And my feeling is, okay, you had TARP 1. Why do we need to go down this road? Because I do fear it's going to be a huge bailout for non-banks, Art. And I think what you're saying, maybe you need to clarify this. The run-up in deficits and national debt is going to what? It's going to cause us to raise tax rates down the road. Is that your issue?
Yeah, and Keith, there are a lot of people who may oppose this for reasons that I don't. I'm just an economist here who wants to look at the economics. You know, when you give money to people based upon some characteristic other than work effort, you have to take it from workers and producers. It comes from taxpayers, period. And if you pay people not to work, and if you tax people who do work, you're going to get a lot less work. And that is exactly what we're doing. And this burden of the tax on the debt is huge, as Larry says. We've gone almost to 100% of GDP in our national debt, and we're just warming up. I mean, and I'm not criticizing Obama personally. Every Republican voted for it, too. So it's not a partisan issue. It's just bad economics.
Well, I disagree. There are people on the left and on the right who agree that we do need some sort of stimulus proposal. Martin Feldstein on the right, Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize-winning economist on the left, who just today,
you're not arguing the economics, Keith. You're arguing names.
Hey, wait a minute,
you're
Keith.
using appeal to authority.
Keith, give me some credit. I'm warming up to Obama's $200 billion of business tax cuts. It may not be perfect, but at least there's something. He's got a tiny bit of Reagan in there. I like that, Keith. But the Democrats just want to spend. Isn't that the problem?
Well, I think the tax cuts are politically necessary because Obama could push this through without them, but he doesn't want to push this through without the Republicans. He wants to have their support, and he wants the country to be united in trying to come up with some sort of pragmatic solution.
But Keith,
Obama is a pragmatist, you know, at the basic level.
But, Keith, there is no tax rate reductions coming here. What they're doing is they're doing credits, they're doing payment for past taxes. You can't change the number of hours you worked last year. If you did the Reagan tax rate cuts or the Clinton tax rate cuts, I'd be on board 100% as I was.
Let me ask you a question. Hang on. I want to get your take quickly. Big news over the weekend. Jared Bernstein, our old great friend, is now working for Vice President Biden. And Christy Romer from UCal Berkeley, she's going to run the new president's Council of Economic Advisors. They've done a paper on the 3.5 million jobs from the stimulus package. In this paper, Arthur, they say $1 of government spending will produce $1.50 of GDP. And then they say $1 of tax cuts will produce, over time, $1 of GDP. In other words, they're saying government spending has a stronger impact on the economy. Do you buy that?
No, I think it's totally wrong, to be honest with you. And I did a paper on that in the Journal of Business back in 1972 that showed that government purchases do increase GDP in the quarter of purchase, but then they're crowded out quickly in the next 3 or 4 quarters. And transfer payments, which is almost all of this stimulus, they actually hurt GDP. And that's exactly what they're doing right now.
And here's the problem. Here's the mystery, Keith.
I mean, this is economics, though.
The mystery, Keith, is that Christy Romer, who's a very fine and distinguished economist, she wrote a paper earlier. This is before this paper over the weekend. But her academic paper a few years ago with her husband said that $1 cut in taxes would increase GDP by $3. So her argument was that the tax cut effect was vastly more stimulative to the economy than the spending effect, Keith. What do you make of that?
Well, obviously, she's not saying that anymore, nor is Jared Bernstein. I don't know what that's all about, and I have to go back to read that in order to make sure that's an accurate characterization of what she said then. But the reality is, though, that there is not a consensus about whether tax cuts will have more of a stimulative impact than spending will, because right now we have a disagreement among economists between the left and the right. So I reject the notion.
Right.
Well, it is in some respect, Art, because you're representing the right and Paul Krugman is representing the left, and you have two totally different perspectives on it.
We're going to have to leave it there.
Thank you, Larry.
I can see we settled everything. Keith Boylin, thank you as always. Art Laffer, thank you as always.